For season 4 episodes involving Beach City citizens, and with this being a wrestling sequel towards Tiger Millionaire, Tiger Philanthropist really feels like an episode that I shouldn't be able to take itself seriously upon watching it for the first time. But considering that this is also the last episode of Laws being Laws before the Good Laws, along with his arc in season 5, that element alone made me rethink about this episode, even though that it's one of the only Beach City episodes that are worth talking about, which isn't saying much considering that this is still a wrestling episode like Tiger Millionaire, but believe me, for the story centering around Amethyst quitting wrestling since that she's getting bored out of it, which leads to Steven being on his own, I wasn't expecting much when it comes to Tiger Philanthropist. But as far as I'm concerned, we're living the development that these two characters have in previous episodes, and when this leads to Steven being on his own with his interactions with Laws, which he still doesn't find out that it was Steven all along, despite the fact that Sadie does. I'm gonna be real with you, this episode, despite being a wrestling episode, still centers around Laws being himself up until before the Good Laws and his development. And trust me when I say this, that's literally all I think of when it comes to this episode after revisiting it. Now, I'm always familiar with the whole character having a repackage due to their staple or teammate being gone from the company in order to make themselves relevant. But the way I see it, every time I see that Steven is just only pressing one person who is Laws, I always got the impression that he just wants some appreciation from one fan, and when this leads to a scenario where he wouldn't be able to make things right and he doesn't know what to do with wrestling at this point, this episode really gave me the demonstration that with it only being the only sequel towards to Tiger Millionaire, I always got the impression that this is mainly Steven and Amethyst moving on, since that their development has improved, unlike their relationship from Tiger Millionaire, where they're trying to get along, which leads to so much going on when it comes to the turmoil that Amethyst is dealing with Pearl and Garnet. But considering that those characters aren't in this episode really feels shallow, but if you don't think about Laws' character. And from my knowledge, this is the first episode where Laws gets to do something after the new Laws. For me personally, every time I think about this being the last Laws episode while he gets character development in the Good Laws, all I can think of is that the people wanted to have Laws be in this state in order to be humorous and not thinking for himself most of the time when it comes to the type of cereal that he eats or anything. I've always thought that, well, when I watched this episode for the first time, Laws is just basically here just to be goofy and just giving motivation towards Steven. And while it still is the case when it comes to Steven's motivation in this episode, without him, this episode would have been worthless in comparison to the other Beach City episodes that I skip out on. Because if you really think about it, if Steven is just trying to focus on his wrestling career, I can guarantee you that he would have had nothing to gain from it, which kind of explains onto why Amethyst quit. And even though that she ended up quitting out on Steven, at the same time, she really had nothing to gain considering that her character has been developed. Whenever I think about Amethyst from this episode, if she did this way earlier in the series, it wouldn't make sense considering that her development is, well, she needs to take out her aggression and frustration in wrestling. And when it comes to this point, it sums up a lot that her character has changed, and for the fact that in seasons 5 in future, well, technically 6 if you want to qualify that as a separate season without the future in the title, she really has nothing else to gain. And believe me, I'll admit that there are still possibilities, but after witnessing the first Season 4 episode that I reviewed, mainly the Know Your Fusion, well, she was in a talk show with Sardonyx while being infused with Steven as Smoky Quartz. I can instantly say for a fact that she really doesn't really need wrestling like she used to. For the longest time, this episode really felt the most worthless, but with me picking this for this marathon, it gave me an understanding that the development centering around Amethyst along with the inclusion of laws, this episode really felt the most important in comparison to the other episodes that are way more important than this. That's mainly the fact that most of the episodes that I ended up skipping didn't have value in reviewing, and even though that I could have watched them while doing my binge watch, even if I did, I don't even think that it would change my mind by reviewing those episodes, because to tell you the truth, I somewhat agree with most of the people on their critiques towards those episodes. So when it comes to this episode, I don't even feel like that this episode is the most worthless. It's still slightly important than the episodes that I skipped on, but that's mainly the fact that I've seen the development involving Laws and Amethyst that kind of makes this episode important in its own way. As for the ending, well, Amethyst and Steven are intentionally losing in order to use the belts in order to give up wrestling. It's similar to the Loud House episode, Can't Win Them All, which I did compare to the Casagantes episode, Saving Face, which I didn't enjoy the ending of that episode, but the thing is, I couldn't feel sympathy towards Lynn Loud completely, and even though that you shouldn't feel sympathy towards all the characters, well, Lynn Loud is the perfect example. The reason why that this ending actually works is that I can actually feel sympathy towards the characters that were better developed, and judging of how that Lynn Loud was poorly developed due to the decisions of the production, it kind of shows that if you actually pay attention to the characters a lot more and focus on the development a lot more, you can really tell that they did this ending much more better in comparison to the Loud House episode, which is why I gave the Casagantes episode the better weighting in comparison to the Loud House episode. Because when I first watched this ending years ago, I didn't enjoy it, because I just found it really lackluster and underwhelming. And after watching the Loud House episode and revisiting this episode, it kind of shows that even in the weirdest ways, this episode ended up becoming important when it comes to Laws and Amethyst's character. Trust me, it's weird to think that these episodes have some meaning towards them, and even if some episodes don't, you can really tell that looking at the characters focusedly when it comes to their development really makes the episode worthwhile in a way that isn't as important as the other episodes. At the very least, it is still important. I don't even know if it's the fact that I'm in 80 episodes of this show to the point that I have more knowledge of this show during my second binge watch, but believe me, a lot of weird things have happened when it comes to picking the episodes, and keeping this episode is honestly the normal decision rather than the same decision that I end up scrapping on other potential episode reviews. But believe me, if I really did a full marathon of reviewing all the episodes for the first time, I wouldn't be able to do it. Believe me, I always have limitations even reviewing 125 episodes. I'm giving this episode a 6.75 out of 10.